Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence. It was the way the kitchen chairs were pushed in, perfectly aligned, like they'd never been used. The coffee pot was still warm, toast untouched in the rack, but both chairs empty. And then I saw it. Not a note, not a suitcase, just a slim white folder, placed exactly in the center of the table like a final course. Nothing handwritten on it. No apology. No I love you. Just a single line typed in the corner. The truth always arrives last. Inside were DNA results. Crisp, printed, clinical. Just facts, like facts were enough to replace an entire childhood. A marriage, a name. 2 names, actually. One was mine. The other was our daughter's. But what hit harder than the words on the page was what wasn't there. No signature. No return address. And no one in the house but me. She was gone. Gone without slamming the door. Gone without giving me the decency of one last lie. We just celebrated my 40th birthday. Well, celebrated is a stretch. She got me socks. Our daughter made a card that said, "You're the best, probably." At the time, I laughed. Now I wonder what that probably was supposed to mean. 10 years have passed since that morning. 10 years of silence from her. 10 years of trying not to hate a child I once would have walked through fire for. 10 years of pretending not to scan every crowd, every face, hoping no, fearing I'd see her again. And then she showed up. Yesterday. She walked into the same kitchen, like no time had passed. Same perfume, same blank expression, same silence. Except this time I had the envelope, and she was the one standing. I said nothing, just slid the folder across the table the same way she had all those years ago. She opened it. Her hands shook, because this time, the DNA results weren't hers to give. They were mine, and the child she ran away with wasn't hers either. She didn't speak right away, just stood there, holding the folder like it might burn her fingers if she gripped it too long. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second, and by the third I saw it, the slight stagger in her breath, the twitch just below her eye. The moment she realized the control she thought she still had was gone. 10 years ago, she vanished with a child she claimed wasn't mine. That was the narrative she left me with. A neat little story delivered in a silent envelope, backed by clinical DNA printouts, and a single line that tore through every fatherly memory I had. I believed her. What choice did I have? She took the child, disappeared, left no trace. No calls, no letters, not even a cruel post on social media to remind me she was still alive and smug about it. Just nothing. I tried to rebuild. Pathetic attempts, really. I spent the first 2 years replaying every conversation we ever had, wondering what I missed, what I overlooked. Then I spent 3 more blaming myself, convincing myself that maybe she ran because I was too boring, too cautious. To me. I spiraled. I lived in motels. I changed cities. Changed my name once. Just to feel like I was something else. Someone she hadn't broken. But nothing stuck. And no matter how far I moved, I still woke up hearing the child's voice in my dreams. My daughter, or so I had thought, calling me dad. And then fading. Just like she did. And now, 10 years later, she was in my kitchen again. Wearing that same ivory blouse she used to wear on Sundays. Hair pulled back like it used to be when she didn't want to argue. Only this time, I wasn't stammering or apologizing for something I didn't do. "You're quiet," I said, almost too calmly. She looked up from the results. "Where did you get this?" I smiled. Not the kind of smile that means you're happy. More like the kind you wear when you've been underwater too long and finally remember how to breathe. "From the one thing you didn't fake," I said. "Her blood type." She blinked. A pause. And then she sat down. Not across from me. She sat in my chair. Like she still owned the place. Like she still owned me. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "These say she's not. Not yours," I finished for her. "Yeah. Weird how truth likes to take the scenic route. Isn't it?" She flinched. I wanted to feel powerful. I didn't. I just felt tired. 10 years of grief, confusion, humiliation. It doesn't vanish when your enemy finally stumbles. It just simmers quieter. She closed the folder, tapped her nails against the table. You did this to punish me. I laughed, bitterly. No, Lark. I did this because she deserved to know. That's when she looked truly shaken. You told her. I didn't answer. Because the real answer? She had found me. My daughter. The girl I was told wasn't mine. She tracked me down with a question she'd been holding for years. Who is my father? And the look in her eyes when I said, I used to think it wasn't me, but I was wrong. That look? It's the only thing that kept me sane. And now, her fake mother had to live in the wreckage she built. Because I had returned. And I wasn't hiding anymore. She stayed in my chair like she was entitled to it. Like she was entitled to anything in that house anymore. I didn't rush her. I let the weight of the silence press down on her. Just like it had pressed on me for a decade. She wanted control again. I could see her calculating, trying to twist this into something she could narrate. But she didn't understand. Her story was no longer the one being told. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight. You shouldn't have told her. You had no right. I didn't answer right away. I wanted those words to hang there, ridiculous and poisonous. No right? After what she did. After the years she stole from both of us? No right? I repeated, my voice quieter than I expected. You stole my name from her. You stole me from her. You left a child without her father, and a father with nothing but a forged piece of paper and a silent house. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No retort, no defense, just guilt, unspoken but finally visible. You knew, I added, from the start. She nodded once, that small, that quiet, as if a nod could erase the years. She was never supposed to find you, she said after a moment. Like that made it any better. Why? I asked. So she could grow up with you and your lies? You didn't want her to find me because she might love me more? That hit her. She looked away. She always asked about you, she admitted. I told her you didn't want her, that you knew you weren't her real dad and chose to disappear. My chest tightened. It shouldn't have surprised me, but hearing it aloud felt like being betrayed all over again. She never believed me, she added. Not fully. Because lies fall apart eventually, I muttered. Even yours. She stood up then, slowly, as if unsure of her balance. Her eyes moved across the room. The old clock, the worn floorboards, the curtains she once picked out that I never changed. Her gaze landed on the fridge. There, held by a magnet, was a photo. It wasn't new, but it wasn't old either. It was me and Marin. She'd taken it herself just 3 weeks ago, her head resting on my shoulder, my arm around her like I'd never stopped being her dad. She looks like you now, Lark said softly, almost to herself. She always did, I replied. You just couldn't admit it. I walked past her and opened the front door. The air was colder than I expected. I didn't tell her to leave. I didn't need to. She knew. Her part in the story was over. But before she crossed the threshold, I said one last thing. She's meeting with a lawyer, I said. You'll be hearing from her soon. Lark froze. Not because of the threat, but because she knew it wasn't one. It was a promise. And for once, it wasn't coming from her. She left without another word. And for the first time in 10 years, I sat at that kitchen table in the right chair. Alone, yes, but finally, for once, not lied to. The next morning, I half expected it to have been a dream. That's how surreal it felt. Seeing her standing in the same kitchen where she once destroyed me, looking smaller somehow, like the years had peeled away whatever illusion of strength she used to carry. But it wasn't a dream. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, like the last breath of a storm. The coffee mug she used was still in the sink, rim stained with the same coral lipstick she used to wear back when she still said, I love you, like she meant it. I stood at the window for a long time, watching the world pass by like nothing had happened. Like 10 years of silence and pain didn't deserve to stop the clocks. My phone buzzed. It was Marin. Just 3 words. Did she come? I didn't know how to answer. I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. Yes. She left again. That was all I could offer. Because how do you explain to your daughter that the woman who raised her, the one who swore she was protecting her, didn't have the strength to even say goodbye properly this time? I met Marin for lunch at a diner halfway between our cities. She was already seated when I arrived, nursing an untouched cup of coffee, tapping her nails on the edge of the table. Her face, so much like mine it hurt, was guarded. Not angry, not emotional, just tight, focused. "She didn't say anything to me," she said before I even sat down. I slid into the booth across from her. "She said enough." She nodded slowly. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking, what if she tries to flip it? What if she convinces herself I'm the one who betrayed her? "She already has," I said. "That's her defense. It's what she's always done. Frame it in a way where she's the wounded one." Marin didn't look surprised. She was quiet when I was a kid, but I always felt like something was off. You ever walk into a room and feel like you were just being talked about, even if no one said a word? I did, often. But when I was with Lark, I used to call that paranoia. I used to gaslight myself just to keep the peace. "She told me when I was 8 that I didn't need a dad," Marin said. "She said some people grow up stronger without one." I didn't believe her. I just thought maybe you didn't want me. I felt something collapse inside me. A 10-year-old ache that hadn't healed, just hardened. "I never stopped wanting you. I just thought you weren't mine." Marin looked away, blinking hard. "We lost too much time." "I know," I said. "But not all of it. Not yet." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small notebook. Inside were questions, literal, written questions she'd been compiling over the past year since she started digging. Questions about our family, about me, about the timeline, about what really happened the night Lark disappeared. She had dates, gaps, phone records, flight receipts. She'd done the legwork. This wasn't a daughter trying to reconnect. This was a young woman preparing for something much bigger. "I'm not just here to know you," she said. "I'm here to take her down." That was the moment it hit me. Marin hadn't just returned to find answers. She'd come back to reclaim something she was denied. And unlike me 10 years ago, she didn't tremble when speaking the truth. I looked at her, at the strength in her jaw, the fire in her voice, and realized that the little girl I once read bedtime stories to had grown into the kind of woman who doesn't run from storms. She walks through them. And Lark? She had no idea what was coming. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to Marin's face in that diner. So calm, so determined. There was something chilling about how she laid it all out, how prepared she was to dismantle the woman who raised her. It wasn't just curiosity driving her anymore. It was justice, or maybe vengeance. And the truth? I wasn't sure which one scared me more. I sat on the couch with the lights off, staring at that stupid postcard she'd left me all those years ago. The one with the beach. The one with the lie. I kept it tucked in the back of a drawer all this time. Not because I couldn't let it go, but because it reminded me of how easily someone can rewrite your entire life with a single sentence. I turned it over in my hands, reading the words again, hearing her voice in my head. "He's not yours. I'm sorry." The audacity, the cold finality of it. It made me want to rip the thing in half, but I didn't. Not yet. My phone buzzed again just after midnight. It was Marin. No text, just a photo. A blurry image of a man. Middle-aged, balding, standing beside a car I didn't recognize. I blinked a few times, confused. Before I could ask, she sent another message. "Do you know him?" I stared at the picture. Something about his eyes, small, shifty, felt familiar. Then it clicked. He'd been at our wedding. I remembered him only faintly, one of Lark's old friends from college. She said they'd lost touch. She said he was nobody. Marin followed up with another message. "His name is Curtis Lane. He paid for my private school." I found the bank records. I sat there stunned. I didn't know whether to be sick or impressed. All those years, I'd been told we couldn't afford certain things. Vacations, a second car, a bigger apartment. And yet somehow this man, this stranger, was footing the bill for our daughter's future behind my back. I started connecting dots I didn't even know existed. "Are you saying he's your real father?" I texted back. The response was almost immediate. No. I tested him. He's not. But he was hers. I froze. The weight of that statement sank into my bones. Lark hadn't just lied to me about Marin's paternity. She'd created an entire ecosystem of lies. People, transactions, relationships. All woven together to keep me outside the walls of my own life. Curtis Lane wasn't just a secret. He was a funding source. A co-conspirator. Maybe more. I called Marin. She answered on the first ring. He was at your birthday, she said without greeting. The one where I turned 9. He sat in the back. Said he was your friend. I remember because Mom got weird when I asked his name. Said he was just a neighbor. But we lived in an apartment. We didn't have neighbors like that. I felt sick. How many times had I been played for a fool under my own roof? What do you want to do? There was a pause. I want to talk to him. Marin. Don't try to protect me. Not now. Couldn't argue. She'd earned this. She'd earned everything. I gave her Curtis's last known address, which I'd found in an old contacts folder Lark forgot to wipe when she left. It wasn't much, but it was a place to start. Before we hung up, she said something I'll never forget. She always told me you were too soft, that you'd never stand up to her. But I think she's the one who should be scared now, because you're not alone anymore. And for the first time in a decade, I felt that truth settle in my chest like a steady heartbeat. I wasn't alone. She had come back, not just to uncover what was taken from us, but to stand beside me. The reckoning had begun. She called me the next evening, her voice steady but low, like she was holding back a storm. I found him, she said. No hello. No hesitation. He lives in a quiet cul-de-sac outside Marlin Grove. 3-bedroom house. No wife, no kids. Just him and a golden retriever named Pilot. And he knows who I am. He recognized me the second I stepped onto the porch. I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the TV that had been playing on mute for the last hour. My heart started doing this thing it hadn't done in a long time. A strange, fast flutter like it couldn't keep up with the weight of her words. What happened? I asked. He invited me in, she said. Offered me tea like we were old friends catching up. And then he said, I always wondered if you'd come knocking. Just like that. No panic. No guilt. Just waiting. I sat down, not even realizing I had. Did he admit anything? Oh, he admitted everything, Marin said. Told me he and Lark started seeing each other a year before she got pregnant. Said it was never supposed to be serious. She was lonely. You worked too much. He was convenient. Disgusting, right? My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. All those nights I stayed late at the office to pay the rent, to keep the lights on, to make sure she had the freedom to write her poetry or nap or wander into whatever identity she was chasing that week. And she'd filled the silence I left behind with him. But here's the twist, Marin continued. He thought he was my father for years. She told him I was his. He paid for everything. Tuition, clothes, tutors, even ballet lessons I never asked for. She kept both of you on the hook. But you? She cut you out. She needed someone to fund her fantasy, I said quietly, and someone else to blame when it all fell apart. Exactly, Marin replied. But get this, he had her letters. Dozens of them. Handwritten. She'd send him updates, photos of me, even drawings I did in kindergarten. She'd sign them all with a fake last name so no one could trace anything. But they were definitely hers. The handwriting matched a birthday card I saved from when I was 6. Did you take them? I asked. I scanned everything, she said. They're already backed up. I'm giving them to the lawyer tomorrow. A thick silence fell between us then. Heavy. I could almost hear her breathing through the line, and I imagined her sitting there in her car or on a bench somewhere, her hands probably shaking in that quiet, defiant way she had. You okay? I asked. She let out a breath. I thought I'd feel angrier, but I don't. I don't know. Like I've just finished a long exam I never signed up for. Like I passed something I didn't study for. You did more than pass, I told her. You exposed the one thing she was counting on never being questioned. There was another pause, and then Marin said something I didn't expect. "He asked if I hated him," she said. "I told him I don't. But I also told him he's just another adult who let her lead, and never once thought to check if the road she was dragging people down was paved with lies." That stuck with me. It rang in my head for the rest of the night. She was right. People like Lark don't operate in isolation. They gather people who don't ask questions. People who think silence is safer. And it was that silence that stole a father from his daughter, and a daughter from her truth. As I ended the call and sat in the stillness of my home, I looked again at the framed photo of Marin on the wall. Her 8th birthday. Face smeared with cake. Grinning so wide you'd never guess what storm was already brewing around her. But now the storm was behind us, and she was leading the charge forward. I was sitting in the lawyer's waiting room when I got the text from Marin. Just 4 words. She showed up early. My stomach dropped. I didn't even have to ask who she was. Of course Lark would find out we were filing. Of course she'd try to spin the narrative before we could pin her to the truth. That was her pattern. Burn the evidence and arrive crying with a story. And people always believed her. They always did. When I stepped into the office, Marin was already seated across from our attorney, Evelyn Harrow, a woman who looked like she could split steel with her tone alone. The folder of scanned letters sat open in front of them. But Marin wasn't focused on that. She was staring out the window, jaw clenched, eyes flickering with something that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't far from it either. "She was in the parking lot," Marin said as I sat beside her. "I watched her sit there for 20 minutes before coming in. She didn't even try to hide. Then she walked in like she had an appointment and told the receptionist she was my mother. Said she was here to make sure I wasn't being manipulated by you." I blinked, stunned. "Manipulated?" Evelyn nodded, her expression unreadable. "She also claimed you were emotionally unstable, that you'd resurfaced recently and were attempting to turn Marin against her. She asked for a private meeting. I refused. Of course she did. Lark had always been skilled at rearranging reality into whatever she needed it to be, a master at victimhood. But this wasn't a therapy session or a book club. This was a courtroom in progress, and no matter how many crocodile tears she manufactured, we had paper trails and DNA results to hold up to the light. "What did you say to her?" I asked Marin. "I told her to sit down and listen for once in her life," Marin replied flatly. "She didn't. She said I'd regret doing this, that it would tear everything apart, like it wasn't already in pieces." Evelyn cleared her throat. "The good news is she left, but not before telling the front desk that she's considering pressing charges for defamation." I scoffed. Let her. At least then we'd finally have her in court under oath. But something about Marin's expression told me she wasn't entirely shaken by her mother's antics. In fact, she looked even more certain now. Like watching Lark flail had confirmed everything she'd suspected. The woman who raised her wasn't strong. She was desperate. And desperation, when exposed, has a funny way of unraveling everything a liar builds. We spent the next hour organizing the timeline. Letters, photos, depositions from old friends and neighbors who remembered strange visits and whispered affairs. And then, tucked near the bottom of the pile, Marin pulled out something I hadn't seen in over a decade. A photo of the 3 of us. Me, Marin, and Lark. Taken on Marin's 3rd birthday. It was one of the few images where we all looked genuinely happy. No forced smiles. No tension. Just simple. And yet, even now, I could see it in Lark's eyes, like she was already planning her exit. "I found this in one of her old boxes," Marin said. "It was shoved in the back behind some tax folders, like she meant to throw it out but couldn't." I took the photo from her, held it carefully like it might fall apart in my hands. I stared at my younger self, naive, hopeful, completely unaware that the woman beside me would one day gut me with a single envelope. "She's not going to give up," Marin said. "You know that, right?" I nodded slowly. "She doesn't know how." But the difference now was that I wasn't the same man she walked out on. And Marin wasn't the child she thought she could silence. We were rebuilding the truth brick by brick, and she had no place left to hide. Still, a small part of me wondered, what would Lark do when the walls finally closed in? What story would she invent next? Who would she become to escape the version of herself we were unearthing? Because women like her never admit guilt. They just change their mask. 2 weeks later, the court hearing didn't end with fireworks or a dramatic outburst. It ended with something far rarer, quiet justice. The judge reviewed the DNA results, the bank records, the handwritten letters Lark thought would stay buried. Marin sat beside me the entire time, calm and poised, like she'd been preparing for this moment since she was old enough to question the silences in her life. Lark tried to interrupt twice. Once with tears, once with fury. Neither worked. Her lawyer barely looked at her. The truth had drained the room of sympathy. And when the ruling came down, it wasn't just a legal win. It was a reset. The judge acknowledged the fraudulent paternity claim, the financial manipulation, the emotional damage. More importantly, he ruled in Marin's favor to formally recognize me, legally, biologically, and irrevocably, as her father. Outside the courthouse, Marin handed me a copy of the order. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. I looked at the name on the paper, Marin Lowe. My last name, restored by choice, not birthright. And that meant more than any ruling ever could. We celebrated the way neither of us expected to. Quietly, over pancakes at a place she used to love when she was little. She told me she was thinking about changing careers, maybe studying law. She said truth had power, and she wanted to help other people find theirs. I told her whatever she chose, I'd be there. For real this time. As for Lark, she left town. Word is she sold her condo and moved somewhere warm. She sent a short email a week later. I hope someday you'll both understand. Marin didn't reply. I didn't either. Because understanding isn't owed, it's earned. And she stopped earning anything from us a long time ago. Now, I wake up each morning to messages from my daughter, sometimes about nothing more than a song she heard or a ridiculous meme she found. And every single one of those messages is a miracle to me. Because for so long, I thought I'd lost her forever. But here she is, and here I am, still standing. So what moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it the postcard lie, the courtroom reveal, or the quiet pancakes at the end? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters. And if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe for more revelations, right here on Reddit Confessions.